Hi everyone. I've got a special treat for you guys. I haven't made a vid in a while, but I've got something new here that I don't believe anyone's ever done a teardown of. What you're looking at is one of 16 modules out of a Tesla Powerpack. I believe this is the Powerpack 2.5, so I don't think it's their completely latest revision, but it's pretty up there. So this is very similar in construction to the home Powerwall, except there are 16 of these modules that make one cabinet, and in a lot of installations I think they use at least probably 4 cabinets to complete the install. But what we have here is the same battery construction you'd find in a Model 3 module, but it's one big module. This is basically 48 volts or 12C of lithium batteries. So the 12 series strings put together. These are the tap and balance wires, and there's, if you can count 12 discharge circuits. There's 2 battery monitor ICs. Now let me step back a bit. Obviously I've taken the cover off, and that was fun because it's glued shut. And there are 2 DC to DC converter modules normally in here. One goes here, and in 180 degrees there's another one that's identical over here, although this one's slightly different. The other one doesn't have the battery management stuff populated, but otherwise it's identical. And what this thing is doing is taking the 48 volts, normally that's one of the terminals, this bus bar goes here, and then transfers power over to this. There's a current shunt here, so this can measure the current going in and out of the battery. And then this system has transformers in it. There are 2 sections that are, I believe, about 1.5 kilowatts each, that can take the 48 volts from the batteries and then convert it into about 400 volts DC. The 400 volts DC is then either wired in series or parallel, depending on the cabinet. I suspect they're all series now, so that produces about 800 volts DC, which normally comes off of terminals, which I've got disconnected, and goes here. And these are like in a bus configuration from module to module. So only one module can keep a whole cabinet running if all the others were to fail. They're not wired in series or anything from module to module. And this DC to DC converter can work both ways. It's bidirectional. So it can take high voltage in and then basically buck it back down to charge the batteries. And they've got, it's very, very innovative. They've got a lot of really cool magnetics. I'll probably do a teardown of this board so you can see the magnetics, which are underneath. You can see the FETs here, which are, I believe they're silicon carbide, or no, maybe these aren't silicon carbide. I think these were switching transistors. This stuff that looks like spaghetti is just some of their, it's this thermal transfer compound that was squirted on here, and then when they pressed the board in, it came through some of the vias. The vias are there to transfer heat in and out of these semiconductors because they do get warm. And then underneath there is this big plate which can be cooled by glycol. So they run glycol in and out of here on each shelf, which cools and heats the battery and the electronics. Other than being very well engineered electronics wise, it's got a TMS 320 made by Texas Instruments, which is a digital signal processor, and that controls this whole module. And then I believe the other module is slave to this one. And then all these are connected together, and then in the bottom of the cabinet, which I don't have, is this thing. This is the cabinet controller for the whole cabinet, and it takes in high voltage and then makes 12 volts DC, which is used to run all the low voltage stuff. I think they probably run a cooling fan and just all the the electronics. So that's what this is. This is a transformer, which kind of works. It's like a smaller scale version that's on the module level. That's just taking the high voltage and it's got a magnetic isolation barrier and making low voltage DC. And again, we have another TMS 320. I guess once you start, programming in a TMS It's easy to keep going. And then there's some harnesses, which I have in a box, that go from here to all the modules. And then this is also slave to a site controller, which I don't have, which, you know, is what your Tesla app would talk to. And it talks to the grid. It controls the inverter. I also don't have the inverter. But it's still pretty interesting to look at this stuff. You know, they really designed these to survive a fire. This is a vent, so in the event of overpressure, all the flames would spit out the back of this. So they probably installed the cabinets with a flame arrestor there so that any flame that comes out of here can't spread into the adjacent modules. So there's like an air gap between this one and the module above it. And I know they've done fire testing where they intentionally cause one of these to burst into flames and it doesn't catch the adjoining modules on fire. So, you know, when you have a big facility that was millions of dollars to install, you don't want one bad cell taking out the whole facility. So they wanted it to be at least contained to the module, and you can slide this out and put a new one in with no hassle. And even then, the rest of the cabinet would probably be functional. It's neat. I would imagine the chemistry on these is different than we find in the Model 3, but doesn't say anything there. So part number. It does say on the front of the pod 8.6 kW, 900 volts. So yeah, that's tells you all there is about it, I guess. I'll if you have any questions about the electronics, let me know. I'll do a teardown there. I haven't. I don't think I have enough without the site controller to get it to function. But you know, when I get some spare time, I will try and play with it. It's just neat to look at. Yeah, very few of these ever leave Tesla's hands, so it's hard to get stuff like this to do a teardown on. If anyone has a line on a new Powerwall, I'd love to tear that down. You know, let me know. All right, everyone, have a good evening.